Good evening, and we welcome you to Kolkata Center for Creativity. Before starting, I would like to introduce our center. It is a multidisciplinary interactive art center located in Kolkata. It works for inclusivity, capacity building, and well-being for artists and different communities and society through presentation, promotion, appreciation of different art discipline in cultural landscape of contemporary India. Today's talk session is on the evolution of Madonna in collaboration with the Italian Institute of Culture, New Delhi. Before we begin, I would like to invite our director, Ms. Rina Devan.
Thank you so much, Moshimi. Reminiscing Master is an attempt of KCC to create a discourse on the works of great masters from India and abroad. While globalization is diminishing lines between cultures and countries, it is also affecting different identities reflected through works of art. When walking towards the contemporary, it is important to have a critical understanding of the context and progress that happened in the works of art in almost the last 7 centuries. The liberation in art is an outcome of the work of many great artists. This series is a mode to understand and reflect on this journey. Raphael's Madonna is one of the most seminal pieces of art ever created, and the comparative study of its further manifestations across time details the distinguished conceptualization of Madonna. We are gathered here to deliver our tribute to Raphael, who has immensely influenced intergenerational conceptualizations across time. I would like to invite Mr. Andrea Baladi, Director of Italian Institute of Culture, New Delhi, to say a few words, and I thank him for the collaboration with KCC.
Uh, Thank you, Dr. Rina Dewan. I will start by thanking you and the Kolkata Center for Creativity for organizing this meeting, and Professor Stefano Zuffi for accepting the invitation to participate. During this difficult period, the Italian Culture Center and the Kolkata Center for Creativity have already collaborated in many initiatives. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the Italian Culture Center has been focusing on working together with local cultural institutes to keep alive a network of cultural actors and to keep offering cultural events, though online, to the Indian public. Our experience collaborating with KCC has been great, for which I thank them again. Today's webinar brings to an end the Italian Culture Center commemoration of the 500th year anniversary of Raffaello Sanzio. And I have to admit, we were not very lucky with it this time. The pandemic forced us to cancel all our scheduled events that were expected to be attended in large numbers, including an exhibition at the KCC, but we still managed to mark this occasion through several online events. This week, for example, we posted 4 videos on our social media pages that were originally produced by the Uffizi Gallery with experts' commentary on the painting of the Madonna by Raphael, displayed at the Uffizi Gallery and in the Palatine Gallery in Florence. With the permission of the museum, we were able to subtitle the 4 videos in English for the Indian public. They can be viewed until the end of the current year for those who want to know more about these important artworks. And as I said, we were very pleased that Professor Zuffi accepted the invitation that we sent him months ago. A brief introduction to Professor Zuffi. After graduation in modern literature from the University of Milan, Professor Zuffi specialized in history of medieval and modern art from the University of Milan and museology and museography from the Milan Polytechnic. He has worked with art publications, first as an editorial and scientific consultant for Electa, from 1994 to 2006, and now through in the editorial office as an author and curator of a series of more popular nature. He also collaborates with art and cultural magazines, with the radio columns, and for documentary screenplays. He has published about 100 books for publishers like Electa Mondadori, Rusconi, Longanesi, and Rizzoli, several of which he co-edited and translated into various languages. And among other things, he is the author of the book that I have to purchase, given my love for cats. Maybe you have seen my cats walking in front of my
My
computer.
bestseller, my bestseller.
And the title of the book is The Cat in the Art. But also, and more relevant for today's event, he has written an exhaustive English edition of the works of Raphael, titled Raphael in Details, published by Ludium. In recent years, he has been instrumental in organizing ancient and modern art exhibitions in different cities around Italy. He's also a member of the Friends of Brera Association and the Friends of the Paul Di Pezzoli Museum Association. And to finish, I would also like to thank the people who are joining us via their computer. And now I give back the floor to KCC because I think it's a time to listen to Professor Zuffi. Thank you.
I'm really pleased and delighted to have the opportunity of speaking to you of one of the beloved master of Renaissance art, Italian ancient art. And yes, we are quite sad about to be forced to cancel a number of exhibitions and occasions to speak and about Raphael and to show his works in different ways, in different places. But unfortunately, all around the world, the culture has so great obstacles and difficulties in these months. And it's a pity because we have another centennial beginning this year in 2021, as to say the seventh centennial, the 700 years from the death of our great poet Dante Alighieri. And so Raphael and Dante Alighieri are two columns of Italian and perhaps of Western culture, Western art and poetry. But speaking about Raphael, I was thrilled about the idea to speak to you about the series of the Madonna. Well, in the language of the art historian, when we speak about a series, we think of a coordinated series of paintings, of images, not as to say, conceived as a series. And this is not the case of the Madonnas by Raphael, because each Madonna is one single work of art. But in effect, thinking about your proposal, I have to admit that it's true that the amount, the number, and the importance of the paintings about the Holy Virgin Mary, the Madonna, in the Christian religion, forms a real series around around the life of Raphael, the short life of Raphael, because we have first of all to remember that Raphael died when he was just 37 years old. So he was a young man, and his career had a tragical stop when he was in the center of his force and creativity and great projects. But let me show the just a moment. Here I am. Let me show you the presentation that I've prepared. I hope you're watching now the screen as I see, and I've divided my presentation in several chapters following the lifetime of Raphael. By good luck, we have some self-portraits by himself, and so we can follow the changement of his face, of his aspect during his lifetime. Raphael is an example of enfant prodige. He was so young during his childhood, and he was named master. He was only 13 years ago, he was named in the documents, in the papers, as master. So he was the follower of his father, Giovanni Santi, who was a good painter in the court of the Dukes of Urbino. Raphael was born in a very, very nice little town in central Italy, an historical town, Urbino, who was the small capital town of a little state, independent state, in the central Italy, surrounded by hills. And the Dukes of Urbino transformed the palace of the ducal palace on the bottom of the town in a marvelous place for studies, for researches, for art, literature, and international meetings during the second half of the 15th century. This is the courtyard of the ducal palace in
sorry for the interruption, sir. The presentation is not visible. I think it's not shared.
I'm sorry. So I start again. Sorry. Let me check the situation. Why? We have done some. Okay.
I think it's coming.
Okay, now?
Yeah, it's perfectly shared, sir. Please continue.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sorry.
Thanks,
it's typical of an art historian not to be so able with technology. So sorry again. So I've said before that by good luck we have a little but kind number of self-portraits by Raphael. The first one is a drawing that we are seeing now on the right, and you see he was a child, a little child, but he was talented in an exceptional way. Really fantastic. The youth and the precocity of Raphael. So I was showing you the exterior by the moment and the courtyard of the ducal palace in Urbino. I like very much the kind of architecture of the palace of Urbino. Is no more an middle-age architecture, but exactly beginning of the Renaissance in civic architecture in Italy. And the most relevant painter working in Urbino short before the lifetime of Raphael was Piero della Francesca. Piero della Francesca is an excellent painter, but also a scientist. He studied mathematics, geometry, and the application of mathematics in painting. For example, this great altarpiece, which was formerly in Urbino, but right now is in the Brera Gallery in Milan, is a perfect example of perspective, mostly in the upper part, when you see this architecture so impressive. Yes, I have also the detail, so impressive by the trompe-l'oeil of a third dimension of a deep apse, a deep construction on the back of the figures. And this was the kind of paintings, the kind of attention of mathematics, proportions, geometry, and so on, just before the birth of Raphael. Raphael was born in this home. It's possible also now to visit the house of the family of Raphael. It's a nice construction on bricks. Right now it's a museum, but inside this place, inside this home, there is perhaps the first painting of Raphael when he was so little, a young boy, perhaps a child. And the first painting by Raphael is a Madonna with the sleeping young little Christ. It's painting on the wall, so it's the technique is the fresco technique, and scholars, but not just art historian, also psychologists, like to think about the fact that unfortunately Raphael lost his mother when he was just 8 years old. So he was a little orphan, and all his lifetime long, the face of the Madonna remains the face of a very young girl, and perhaps it's the reflect of the lack of his mother and the remembering the aspect and the face of his mother. And during his childhood and during his adolescence, Raphael stayed in Urbino, or not so far from Urbino, in the surrounding of the town, and we have some example of his style, of his painting when he was a teenager. For example, we conserve some fragments, not the complete altarpiece. It was quite destroyed by an earthquake during the 18th century, but one of the first figures painted not on a wall but on wood is again the figure of a young Madonna, here on the left of this panel of this fragment of the altarpiece. But when he was about 17 or 18 years old, Raphael decided to follow the most important painter of the the country in which he lived, as to say, Pietro Perugino. This is the portrait by Perugino by Raphael, now in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. And the style of Perugino was a very simple and sweet style of smiling Madonnas, of elegant saints, of nice landscapes, always during the springtime, so green hills, attractive woods, little lakes or rivers, and so on. And Raphael studied the style by Perugino, and we can see the influence by Perugino in the works painted during the very first years of the 16th century. And again, we notice the presence of the figure of the Virgin Mary, for example, in this crowning of the Madonna, that is the upper part of an altarpiece now in the Vatican Gallery of Paintings in Rome. The Madonna with the Child painting during the stay close to Perugino, we prefer not to say that Raphael was a pupil of Perugino, because he reached Perugino when he had his own style prepared during the childhood with his father Giovanni Santi and in the court of Urbino. But the first Madonnas, the independent Madonna with the Child, for example, this one in United States, in the Norton Simon Museums of Pasadena, or this one in Germany, one of the five panels of the Madonna on show in the Staatliche Museum in Berlin, in the Gemäldegalerie. These two Madonnas are really close to the style of Perugino. So you see everything is sweet and calm and very relaxing. This is exactly what was expected by a follower of Perugino. But at the end, you see also some drawings. For example, this is a sheet in the collection of drawings of the Ashmolean Museums in Oxford, in the UK. And you see that also the preparative drawings are really close to the style of this period. But at the end of this contact with Perugino, something happened, because we can see the situation regarding this great painting that is in a church in a medium town on the shore of the Adria Sea. This is a great altarpiece realized by Perugino, but the little panel at the bottom here, under the principal panel, shows us 5 stories of the life of Mary, from the birth to the death of the Holy Virgin Mary. And well, we think that this part of the altarpiece was realized directly by Raffaello and not by Perugino. And in effect, these little scenes, little episodes of the lifetime of the Virgin are much more vivid respect of the quite, well, nosing, annoying, and not so interesting organization of the main panel. And perhaps the most interesting is the central uh, story, the marriage of the Virgin. Here you see Saint Joseph and the Virgin, and it's the moment in which Joseph is placing, is it's marrying Mary with the ring, the wedding ring. And it is exactly the same scene, the same episode of the first real great masterwork by Raphael. As to say, the marriage of the Virgin, this is an altarpiece now in the Brera Gallery in Milan. And this is when he was 21 years old. And this is one of the turning point of the career and of the style by Raphael. Yes, again, the most important figure is the Holy Virgin, is the Madonna, but now in a situation of a surrounding architecture. We are in front of a great temple with dome, and the horizon of the landscape is very, very, very far from us. And the breathing atmosphere, the quality of the light, and also the tenderness of the figures is really step step over respect of the style by Perugino. And in this moment, Raphael decided to have his own and important and independent career as a young painter, and he decided to leave his birth zone and to move to Florence. Florence was perhaps the most important town for history of art in Italy. I guess that you perfectly know the importance of the history of art in Florence and during several centuries. But at the beginning of the 16th century, Florence was in his perhaps his more high point of his history. In these years were on work in Florence the two great masters, Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. And so the young Raphael wanted to achieve, to complete his studies in straight connection with Leonardo and Michelangelo. And the subject of the Madonna was quite an exercise for Raphael in order to improve his style and to be more and more complex. For example, this is a little but charming panel in the Hermitage of St. Petersburg. In general, we recognize, we name the Madonnas by Raphael with the name of an ancient collector or eventually by the patron of the painting. And so quite often the Madonnas by Raphael are named with surname of one collector. For example, the Madonna Connestabile in this case. And again, you will see some other examples. I like very much this little panel because it is exactly the moment of the changement of relations by Raphael. No more in contact with Perugino, but now in the context of Florentine art. And for example, you can see the landscape and the meteorology. It's not the um, eternal springtime by Perugino, but a winter landscape. No leaves on the trees, the snow on the hills, the impression of um, a cold temperature. And so the charming figure of the young Madonna is completely by the amusing little child that is trying to read the small book. And immediately you recognize the growing of the style and of the quality of the painting by Raphael. So he was really able to understand and to receive the lesson of the great masters, but to be totally independent and original. This is the small Cooper Madonna. Mr. Cooper was very, very lucky. He had in his collection two different Madonnas by Raffaello, and so there is the small Cooper Madonna and the large Cooper Madonna in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. And you see Raffaello is more sure about his style. The figures are facing us in the first row, very close to us, and the landscape is interesting because there is a number of little details, such as in the Flemish paintings. And in this other case, you see the difference. Here, the Madonna is on the sunny light, surrounded by a natural and open landscape. And in this case, on the contrary, we are inside a room in light and shadows, in a condition of light really different. And it's very, very, very famous, this Madonna of the Great Duke, because it was held by the Great Duke of Tuscany, and the nickname is again this one. And again, the Bridgewater Madonna in Edinburgh, National Gallery of Scotland. And you see here the gesture of the figures is not so calm and quiet like in the preceding examples. And we try to recognize here the influence by Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci in this period was in Florence, involved in several important works. And the most interesting question about Leonardo is that Leonardo wanted that all the figures in his paintings are in movement, not fixed by moving in the gestures, moving in the bodies, moving in the faces, and moving in the souls. Most of all, and Leonardo wrote, I want to represent the movement of the soul. And Raphael tried to have in his Madonna more and more the different situation of psychology. And we can count the number of the Madonna painted during the 4 years spent in Florence, and it's a large amount of paintings. And so we art historian, we think that Raphael chose this subject of the Madonna with the child as an experiment, as an exercise to check the progression of his style. This is one of the three paintings by Raphael in the Alte Pinakothek in Munich, in Germany. And this is the large Cooper Madonna. And again, the Madonna Colonna in the Gemäldegalerie in Berlin. And all these panels, because all these paintings are not on canvas, but on wood, the typical material used by Raphael was not the canvas as support of the painting, but wood. All these panels were realized for single patrons and collectors, are of a medium or small size, and they was destined to be hung inside the homes, inside the palace of Florentine patrons. These are private paintings, not great altarpieces for a large public, for prayers, for people going in a church, but small size, very concise, not just two figures by the moment. And so these are jewels for single patrons, for single persons, for families. The situation is quite more complicated when Raphael began to add some figures and to add, for example, Saint Joseph or Saint Anne or the little Saint John and so on. What about the influence by Leonardo and Michelangelo? Well, I guess that you can easily recognize the Mona Lisa on the left. Mona Lisa, the portrait of the Gioconda, as we prefer to name her, was began in Florence and then kept by Leonardo during his successional travels to Milan and to France. But the Mona Lisa was begun in Florence, and immediately Raphael changed the style of the female portraits very, very close to the Leonardo one. You see the evident relationship between the Leonardo most famous figure and one of the female portraits realized by Raphael during the stay in Florence. One of complicated and very rich and clever painting by Leonardo is this altarpiece with the Madonna, with the child and Saint Anne and a lamb here. In the first idea, it was not a lamb, but another child, as to say the young Saint John the Baptist. So Raphael watched the beginning of the studies and the drawings by Leonardo of these paintings, and so he changed the shape of the group of figures, and you see the triangle of the position of the three figures. The Madonna is seated, and the head of the Madonna is the upper part of an ideal triangle formed by the two children, Saint John the Baptist and the infant Jesus. And again, we have three different groups by Raffaello. This one is in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. This one is in the Louvre in Paris. And the third is in Vienna, Kunsthistorisches Museum. And you see three different versions of exactly the same theme, as to say, the Madonna with two children, not just one child, but two children, the infant Jesus and the little St. John the Baptist. And so the group is more complicated. The movement, the relationship between the figures follows the lines and the example by Leonardo. One, two, three, and I add also the more complex Holy Family with Elizabeth, Saint Elizabeth, and the young Saint John. So five figures, not just two or three, but five figures, once again like a triangular shape, following the master lesson by Leonardo. But the paintings by Raphael have a so natural and direct beauty that is absolutely new respect of the complicated research by Leonardo and the strong figures and not so relaxed by Michelangelo. The natural beauty of Raphael is something marvelous because it's a human and divine beauty in the same time. And the use of light and colors are so bright that it's completely new, also for Italian history of art. And you can see easily the enormous difference between the simple and natural groups by Raphael and the really complicated group of the Holy Family by Michelangelo. This is the so-named Tondo Doni. It's on a round shape. Florentine patrons and painters really liked the roundish shape of the paintings. And the interesting thing is that this painting was realized for a couple of patrons, these two, Agnolo Doni and his wife Maddalena Strozzi, painted by Raphael. So this very, very lucky couple was portrayed by Raphael, and in their home it was hung this extraordinary masterwork by Michelangelo. And so the young Raphael was really close to Leonardo and Michelangelo, but his style is again so completely original. For example, the round shape, you see the difference between the round shape of the Tondo Doni by Michelangelo and the Madonna Terranuova by Raphael, now in Berlin. The same shape of the painting, of the wood, of the panel, but something completely different. Not the complication by Michelangelo, not the gesture intricate and really strong and quite forced, but on the contrary, the deepness of the sides and the so warm approach with us regarding facing the figures. You see the eyes of the Madonna by Raphael facing our own eyes in a relationship so deep and warm and direct. At the end of this period in Florence, Raphael began a small panel, the Esterhazy Madonna, now in Budapest, in Hungary. It's unachieved, uncompleted. It's again a research around um, the presence of three figures, Madonna, Christ, and the little Saint John the Baptist. But in this case, we have also the drawing in preparation for the painting. The drawing is, you see, absolutely directly connected with the painting, but there is a difference. You can check here on the upper part, on the right, on the corner, on the right, the landscape is an hills and woods and some constructions, but in the painting there are here some Roman ruins, and in effect this painting was begun in Florence but achieved, completed in Rome. And this is the fourth chapter of the life by Raphael, the passage to Rome, and the position of leading artist in the court of the popes, Julius II, and mostly Leo X. And at the beginning of his stay in Rome, we have again some small-sized Madonna devoted to single patrons, to single collectors, like the Aldobrandini Madonna and the charming Alba Madonna, now in the National Gallery of Art in Washington. But during the stay in Rome, the Madonnas by Raphael are no more just for single patrons, for private homes, but are the center of great altarpieces, like the Foligno Madonna, now in the Vatican Gallery of Paintings, like the Madonna of the Closed Window, now in Florence. And I think that you can immediately recognize that these paintings are not completely by the hand of Raphael, because during his stay in Rome, Raphael used more and more his workshop, a group of young but very well-educated painters that helped Raphael in the execution of the paintings. Raphael had an enormous amount of jobs to achieve, but I would like to end my presentation and to give space for questions and answers with one of the leading masterworks in Western art. I'm speaking about the Madonna Sistina. The Madonna Sistina is an altarpiece exceptionally painted on canvas and not on wood, realized by Raphael in Rome, but for a church in a town in northern Italy. During the 18th century, this masterworks was sold to the king of Saxony, and from the middle of the 18th century, it's the masterpiece, the leading masterpiece in the painting gallery, in the Gemälde Gallery in Dresden. And the Madonna Sistina, is well known mostly for the two figures of angels in the lower part, and sometimes you can see these two so nice charming little angels reproduced like an independent painting, but they are a little, you see, here you can recognize the two figures, is a little part inside a great composition, a composition that is centered on the double figures of the Madonna and the Child. And again, Raphael painted this Madonna when he was 30 years old. It was in the central part of his lifetime, of his career in Rome. He was well renowned all around the Pope's court, but in all the countries. And again, there is these eyes, so deep and sweet and charming eyes of the Madonna and the Child. And this is perhaps the last Madonna painted by the hands of Raphael. We have some other paintings with the Madonna during the last 5 or 6 years of the short life by Raphael, but they are mostly realized by the workshop and not directly by Raphael. So I would finish with this so sweet and great and deep masterwork. It's a figure of gentleness, it's a figure of hope, it's a figure of beauty, and I guess that in this period we have exactly need of beauty and of hope. So thank you so much for the moment, and now I will read your questions, and I will try to give you some answers. Thank you again.
We have almost reached the end of our session. We all probably want a session like this to never end. We have to conclude the session, but before that, let's take a look at the questions we have received in the chat. There's only one question. It's always said that Raphael's painting had a mystical feel to it. Can you explain, in terms of technical use, how did he achieve it?
Speaking about the technique by Raphael was not so new respect of the general overview of his lifetime. So the technique used by Raphael, it's absolutely the same of the other painters in Renaissance Italy. But there is something completely different, because Raphael liked to have living models in front of him during the drawing before and the painting then. And it's really interesting for us to see some drawings by Raphael with young pupils or some normal people in the same gestures of saints or other figures, but with the garments, the normal garments, not with the habits of the final composition. And this is quite interesting, because a number of painters preferred to use a repertory of figures, of drawings, and not to face living models, living men or women in front of him. So this is quite different and quite new, but on the contrary, the use of colors, of materials is in the tradition of his time, nothing strange or unusual. I don't
Thank
know
you.
if
And another, okay. Another question from Ritam Mukherjee. Did Raphael spearhead the use of verisimilitude in Italian Renaissance art?
Well, this is not so easy to answer. We have to remember that the central idea of humanism and Renaissance in Italy was to reproduce the living nature. Um, like in the ancient time of Greeks and Romans. So art was conceived like an imitation of nature. And the more you are close to nature, the more art is appreciated. For example, Leonardo studied with an enormous attention the leaves, the trees, the flowers, the vegetables, and so on, and all the rocks. So the kingdom of nature all around him. And also Raphael had a great attention to nature and verisimilitude. But first of all, he liked the human figure, the human being. And so the figures, for example, exactly of the Madonna, were living young girl. For example, the Madonna Sistina, we know the name of the model posing in front of Raphael. He was a young girl named Margherita Luti. She was the lover of Raphael. We have some portraits by her, and so he was also painted by Raphael as the Madonna. So this is the verisimilitude for Raphael, the use of living models facing in front of you.
And last question from Poonam. What would you believe is the special gift of Raphael to the paintings of the Madonna and the Trinity?
Uh, but first of all, we have to admit that the Madonna is one of the most frequent frequent item and subject in Italian Renaissance art. Uh, this is it's not just by Raphael, but all Italian painters painted the Madonna with the child. I said in the beginning of my presentation that Raphael, in his childhood, when he was 8 years old, lost his mother. He was an orphan, and perhaps the particular deepness and sweetness of the Madonna by Raphael is an echoes, a remembering of the lack of his own mother. This perhaps. About the Trinity, well, this is a good question because in different paintings, mostly in frescoes in Perugia and in Rome, Raffaello tried to give a figure of this mystery of Christian religion, because it's very hard to explain the question of the Trinity. One substance and three different figures, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And Raphael tried to represent this mystery with great success, mostly in the first room of the Vatican, of the apartment of Pope Julius II. There is a great fresco that is in the central space, present us the axis, the vertical axis of the Father God, the Son, and the dove, the symbol of the Holy Spirit. Well, well done, we have to admit.
And also another question from Anath. One cannot but see how he differs in the painting in terms of tones between his time divided between Florence and Rome. Did it have anything to do with the study of light and color in different environment?
Um, First of all, the large number of the paintings realized by Raphael during his stay in Rome are not completely by his hand, but they have been realized by his pupils, his workshop, and it's quite difficult, I think, to judge the quality of shadows and lights and colors, because we have to think about the presence of other hands. In general, the brightness of the light by the paintings by Raphael, mostly in Florence, I like very much the 4 years spent by Raphael in Florence, mostly by the brightness and the transparency of the light. This is really marvelous. And it is exactly in the same years of the researches of other Italian painters of this, exactly of the same years, the first 5 years, 5, 7, yes, we say 10 years of the 16th century, mostly in northern Italy, in Venice. It was Giorgione who was realizing exactly the same result. So a natural landscape, a really evidence of um, surrounding light, not it's difficult for me to explain, but think about this question. The figures by Raphael and also by Giorgione are not in front of a landscape, but are inside a landscape. And this is really important because the light, the natural light, the sunny light, is surrounding the figures and not just at the back of the figures. And this is absolutely new, absolutely new. And Raphael, it's a great master for this result, but exactly at the same time, we have another great painter in northern Italy, in Venice, which who was realizing something totally similar. And it's interesting because there are no connection, no biographic connection between Raffaello and Giorgione. By evidence, it was something, it's a general research, a development of the Renaissance in Italy, not just architecture and perspective and research of mathematics and geometry, but now researches on landscape and open nature. And I guess, I'm quite sure that is a result of the geographical travels in exactly in the same period. And the fact that the world was wider respect the Europe, the travels around the oceans, the navigation around Africa or to Americas or to India too, uh, uh, gave to artists and to intelligent people the idea of a larger world, not just the world of a tradition, the world of perspective, a constructed world around or on the back of the figures, but new horizons. And I would, it's possible for me just 1 minute to add that during the stay of Raphael in Rome, arrived in Rome an elephant carried by India. And this elephant was a strange beast, a strange animal. It was from the ancient time of the Roman Empire that no elephant arrived to Rome. And we own some drawings by Raphael of this Indian elephant, and so it is a connection, a little connection between Raphael and India too, in the same time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Uh, almost everyone would agree with me that we have learned so much through this discussion today. We would like to thank our speaker, Mr. Stefano Zuffi, and director Andre Baldi, Italian Institute of Culture, New Delhi, for participating in the discussion, and of course, those who were with us in the audience, because without them, this discussion would have been incomplete. We would request everyone to follow our page on Facebook, Instagram, and our website to receive more updates on upcoming events. Once again, I thank everyone for the delightful evening we had together. Thank you. Stay safe. Good night. Bye bye.